Okay, gotta start writing the script for the next video in the Bonanza Month. Now, how should I begin?
A few moments later. 3 semesters later. 3 voyages later. 1 hike later. 1. Just one.
I've got it! Yes! Yes! The pieces have come together. The chips are falling perfectly into place. The audience will go crazy when they see what I have in store. I've practically got them in the palm of my hand with this. Just gotta put the finishing touches and done! Now let's see how it's doing. Howdy!
Judy! So how's the script going? Good enough. Nice intro. I should get me one of those. Anyway, howdy doody everyone, Wambu here.
And how's it going, everyone? I'm Chaos Key.
Lately, my collaborator and I have been playing this obscure platform fighter from an indie development company called Nintendo. Maybe you've heard of them.
Yes, I have, in fact.
Chaos Key, it was a joke.
Nintendo is actually a very well-known company, and Super Smash Bros. Is probably the most popular platform fighter ever.
I'm not gonna get very much comedic mileage out of you, am I?
But not everything about this series is hype.
No kidding. It's probably no surprise that a huge crossover with such lofty ambitions would sometimes arrive at some pretty bizarre places. And well, that's exactly our topic for today. Places.
For every frickin' King of Fighters stadium, we get a Dreamland
Piss World.
Yep, Smash has had quite a number of crappy stages throughout the years. Even with the ability to turn hazards off in Ultimate, a lot of them just aren't fun to play on.
So that's what we're diving into today. These are the 10 stages that, to us at least, had their ambition totally underutilized or completely misguided. Whether they're irritating, boring, or borderline unplayable, Key and I suffered through all of these, so y'all better appreciate it.
Now it should be noted that we are looking at all Smash Brothers installments for this list, but due to circumstances, it just happens that many of the stages you'll see are in Ultimate.
And that's not cause Ultimate had bad stages, it's cause it has a ton of stages. Aw man, you're censoring me.
You set a good example for the youngins, or you set no example ever again.
Damn. Some of these stages have undergone changes throughout their multiple appearances in the franchise, and some of those changes have actually been improvements, so if we ever need to specify a game, we will. Alright, so that's every game as a factor, specifications if necessary, and Womboy can't swear. Any other rules?
I mean, you can go ahead and swear, you'll just be censored for the stronger words.
You're a bitch.
See? Like that. Anyway,
let's begin. Gotta say, writing this list, I realized that the worst of Smash Bros. Stages really do invoke a diverse array of negative emotion. Like, it's not just anger, it's confusion, bitterness, disappointment, car sickness, emptiness, constipation.
Wait, what did you say?
Disappointment?
No, the one after that. Was that car sickness?
Yeah, it's when you get sick inside a car.
I know what it means, but why does it involve car sickness?
'Cause of this.
Oh. So this what are you doing?
Pouring one out for Melee Mute City.
Why?
'Cause I miss Melee Mute City.
Okay, but why are you pouring a bottle of chicken tender sauce?
'Cause I miss Melee Mute City.
That's not... Whatever. Anyway, joking aside, we really miss Mute City from Melee. That was an awesome stage. But this? Oh, it's an interesting stage, don't get us wrong, but I wouldn't say it's particularly great.
I at least understand the idea of wanting to introduce an F-Zero stage with a rear view perspective. It effectively ends up being to Big Blue what Venom is to Corneria, and I'll always give credit to good sprite work. But that's about where my praises for it would end, cause gameplay-wise, it feels like a haphazard mess, and not even in a particularly fun way.
Unlike Big Blue, which keeps its moving elements at a slow pace to both keep the feel of moving with racers and allows players to keep track of everything and not get too overwhelmed, Mute City SNES has moving elements that like to suddenly change positions out of the blue. This leads to much frustration when trying to fight. One moment you're on top of a racer platform fighting an opponent, and the next the racer moves off screen with you on it. Or maybe you're on one of the hovering platforms and want to move down to a racer platform below, only for it to immediately move out of the way, causing you to hit the ground and bounce off. Let's hope your damage percentage isn't high when that happens.
And it's not like there's any particularly exciting stuff happening on the stage that would at least make it enjoyably messy. The other cars just come in, bump the central car for a little while, maybe jerk around a bit, and then go. If there was maybe a way for players to influence the cars in some way, like maybe spinning out or destroying them, it'd still be obnoxious, but it'd at least be kind of inventive. As it is now, I'm not sure what there is to get out of this that isn't done more enjoyably in Big Blue, or, you know, in Melee Mute City.
Or, you know, a new F-Zero game. Or heck, just re-release GX and everyone would mostly be happy. Not like that would ever happen, though.
Well, this got depressing.
Give me that sauce.
You know, since we're talking about places, yours is pretty nice.
Oh, thanks.
You got a nice TV.
Dynamic 200,000 to 1 contrast ratio, baby.
A cool lamp. You know I gotta shout out a cool lamp.
The lamp is okay.
And this lever is simply to die for.
Cost me a fortune. Wait, lever? I don't remember there being a lever. I didn't even install a...
You even got a basement?
I don't even have a basement. I didn't even know this was here. What even is here? And I hate it.
Aw man, I kinda like it.
Why?
'Cause it's great.
Are you kidding me? It's borderline offensive.
I think we can both agree it's cave.
Yeah, it's cave.
So, I'm not actually kidding here. I do genuinely kinda like this one. Would I ever choose it in any sort of serious match? Hell no. I alluded earlier to High Ambition being greatly misguided, and Great Cave Offensive is pretty much the poster boy for that.
So, this stage was clearly made to facilitate 8-player Smash, which, yes, with a mode like 8-player Smash, you would need stages this big and roomy to justify having this many players all at once. But the problem with Great Cave Offensive is there's just too much going on to make it a fun stage. I mean, look at this. It's a heavily cluttered place.
And the funny thing is, Kirby Superstar's Great Cave Offensive subgame is actually a pretty inspired source to base a stage around. It's a whole multifaceted underground system with about 4 or 5 distinct locales. Any one of them could be great on their own, but how about all of them?
And unfortunately, they failed here. It just looks like a malformed amalgamation of Great Cave Offensive's themes with many hazards that will get in the way, like spikes, rotating cannons, and minecarts that do not in any way help you. One of them actually kills you.
This stage is so out there for Smash that even dying on it is unconventional. While in pretty much every other stage it's just a straightforward game of get your opponent out of here, Great Cave Offensive is so bloated and boxed in that you generally can't really do that. Instead, notching a KO involves getting an opponent to 100%, and then knocking them into one of the many danger zones.
Danger zones?
Key, please, no.
Danger zone!
End me.
Joking aside, it's really not fun. 100% feels like it's too low of an amount to have the danger zones instantly KO. Especially since the stage is so closed in with a lot of ceiling, you'll be bouncing around constantly, and since there are a lot of danger zones on the stage as it is, you will most likely hit them frequently and thus die frequently.
So thumbs down on this one, huh?
Absolutely.
Does that mean you're not using it?
I don't live here, Wambu.
Can I have it?
I don't live here, you son of a monkey!
You know what Smash has a lot of?
Clone characters?
Well, yes, but no.
Music?
Yeah, but no.
DLC?
Please stop answering.
Maximum Oversaiyan.
Battlefields. It has a lot of battlefields. There's Big Battlefield, Small Battlefield, Yoshi Battlefield, Kirby Battlefield, and Terrible Battlefield.
So, Brawl was kind of the pseudo-revival before the actual revival of Kid Icarus with the inclusion of Pit. So of course, a stage would be made as Pit's home stage, and visually, it looks really nice. But then you actually play on it.
Remember how I said I liked Great Cave Offensive? Welp, fun's over. Skyworld low-key makes me want to die.
You're a ghost, so wouldn't you already be dead?
Yes. and that's how I know death is more enjoyable. Look, on the surface this feels like a pretty inoffensive target to punch down on, but you know what? That's exactly what this stage is. You punch down on the surface and watch it all crumble away. In all seriousness, being boring isn't normally something that would put a stage on my radar as being one of the worst, but taking an already overused layout and making it more irritating is something I just can't understand anyone liking.
Getting into the mechanics of the stage, the platforms can be damaged and destroyed, and when they do, you're left with fall-through cloud platforms with no grabbable ledges. So if you aren't careful when you get off the stage, you'll plummet to your death. And considering you need to attack in order to win, you will hit these platforms. But when these platforms aren't destroyed, they're an incredible nuisance. Why? Well, you see, these platforms are completely solid, meaning the elevated platforms are ceilings. And I think we all know how bad ceilings in Smash can get.
And that's ultimately the core of why Skyworld is particularly egregious to us. It's not brought down by any super outrageous stage elements or mechanics or anything. That would have maybe been a little interesting. Nah, the stage sucks because everything about it is a mild annoyance. Whether the floors are broken or not, it's never unplayable, it's just always kinda awkward. A lot of stages may be bad for being excessively large or ugly or chaotic. Skyworld is just excessively lame. The kind of bad that doesn't even have the good sense to be fun to talk about.
But Wambu, it does have one unique thing from the rest of the Battlefield stages.
And that is?
It has one extra platform that floats off stage at the bottom.
Well, this changes everything.
Really?
No. Huh. Well, that's awkward. Hey, Key, can I take that whole speech I just said and recycle it here?
Don't do that, that's just lazy.
And that's ultimately the core of why New Pork City is particularly egregious to us. It's not brought down by any super outrageous stage elements or mechanics or anything.
Yes it is. This stage is incredibly roomy, a lot more so than other big stages. It has very disconnected platforms that make traversing it a chore. It also doesn't help that a lot of the platforms are very small. In other words, it's a very barren stage.
It's not as overwhelming as Great Cave Offensive, but it's somehow less cohesive. And at the very least, Great Cave Offensive has stuff in it.
And for the stuff that New Pork City does have in it, the swinging ship and the breakable platform at the very bottom don't really add enough to make it interesting. But there is one thing about this stage that makes it infuriating to play on.
It has pork in the name, but no piggies.
Worse, the ultimate chimera.
If everything about the stage wasn't seemingly random enough, what if a pink quadruped made 90% out of teeth just sorta teleported in and instantly killed you? Ain't that just the topper this stage needed to bring it all together? I feel like I could literally just scribble around in Stage Builder and get a similar result to this. If I will say one thing for the chimera though, it's at least got a cool hat.
Mother 3 finally has some international appearance outside Japan, and this is what we get. I mean, I will say I'm kinda glad it's back in Ultimate, if only so Lucas can have a home stage again after being cut initially in Smash 4. But in the end, it's still just another attempt at making another Hyrule Temple, and it being inferior to it. At least Palutena's Temple can be fun.
And if we have to be brutally honest, even the pork is mediocre.
Yeah, 0 out of 10. This next entry is... What the...
What's up?
Did you see that?
See what?
The next there it is again!
I don't know what you mean.
This next... entry... Wambu!
I'm throwing crabs at you!
I knew it! Oh look, another stage that originated from Brawl. Yeah, it should go without saying, a lot of the stages from Brawl weren't very good. Mario Bros tries to replicate the feel of the original arcade and NES game with a fixed camera and how you defeat enemies in that game, and it succeeds in that aspect. But as a stage to battle on, everything about it just doesn't work.
It's a shame because I really do love Brawl to this day. In most circumstances, I embrace it as the inventive little black sheep it was for the franchise. It felt like it was always trying new things, and sometimes you get genuinely great stages like Pirate Ship or Spear Pillar, and sometimes you get this. If I had to explain it succinctly, Mario Bros is basically just Super Smash Bros. Dodgeball.
Except good luck actually dodging anything. So instead of dodgeball, it's basically just ball. Even with Brawl trying new things, this came at the cost of a lot of stages running rampant with hazards. And oh boy, does Mario Bros. Love its hazards. Since this is meant to replicate the original Mario Bros. Arcade game, several enemies and hazards from that game show up frequently. And like in Mario Bros., hitting the enemies enough times will disable them, which in the case of Smash, turns them into items to pick up and throw.
And that's really where any match on this stage just totally devolves, because the knockback from having one of these little buggers thrown at you is unreasonably high. You can get killed at such low percentages from them that you might as well just totally discard your moveset and take all your enemies to a fancy dinner at Joe's Crab Shack. Not sponsored. As soon as this stage comes on, all pretense of a serious match flies out the window. I'm not gonna lie, it's actually kind of fun in a way. A very hollow, stupid way.
Yeah, you would. You do like dumb stuff, don't you? I can kinda see that appeal too. But looking at this stage from an objective view, it gets points for capturing the feel of a classic game and introducing a very interesting idea. But the execution of the whole thing leaves much to be desired. Wow, 2 stages based on old retro games made the list. And to think these aren't the only retro-themed stages they did and failed in the execution for.
Hey, Key.
Don't you dare! I see your hand! Put it down, Wambu! Wambu, put it down! I'm watching you. And speaking of bad retro-themed stages...
I know between Mute City, SNES, Mario Bros, and now this, it may seem like we're just needlessly punching down on all the retro games.
And
we are.
So, why are the retro stages so disliked? Well, as a reference to old classic 80s to 90s retro games, it's a cool idea in theory to battle on stages like these. The problem is, they all end up being a pain to actually fight on due to the multitude of gimmicks thrown in, that it all just becomes a big mess no one wants to deal with. Flat Zone X, which is actually Flat Zone from Melee and Flat Zone 2 from Brawl combined, is no exception.
From a referential standpoint, I get that it's actually kind of faithful, and I certainly see why it needs to exist. The silhouetted two-dimensional kill my enemies with the number 9 man and needs a home stage too. I won't deny him that. But good lord, is it just an obnoxious, overwhelming stage to play on. Nintendo's approach to retro themes are so strikingly on the nose, like everything just has to be copied to a T. So of course, every obstacle comes at you in sporadic and distracting bleeps and bloops. It's like the game itself is running 60 frames per second while the stage is going 60 seconds per frame.
That last part isn't exactly true, but the transitions between each Game & Watch screen are so slow that it may as well be. Speaking of the Game & Watch screens, it cycles through a number of them, such as Fire, Helmet, Fire, Lion, Fire, Oil Panic, Fire, Chef, and Fire.
I think you missed one.
Which one?
Fire.
Oh yeah, my bad. Anyway, all of these screens have a unique gimmick, and a lot of them are frustrating. Helmet rains down screwdrivers and wrenches, Oil Panic punishes players for hitting pedestrians filling up gas in their cars, Chef rains down food, Lion has lion tamers that like to bounce you all around the stage, possibly leading to your death, and Fire is everywhere, and it's not fine. And all of this is constantly transitioning, meaning you're constantly having to adapt to the stage. Top that all off with walk-offs and low blast zones, and you've got yourself a very annoying stage.
I'll be kind of charitable and admit that I don't really know how I'd personally improve this stage without compromising the faithfulness of it. More space maybe smoother transitions, I don't know. It's not a fun stage, but it's the kind of disaster that feels sort of inevitable if a character like Game & Watch is going to be in the game. But just because we expect it doesn't mean we have to like it. I'm exactly the type of person to rent a home in Florida and still complain about the heat, so I ain't giving it a pass.
You know, they have air conditioners in Florida, right?
Are you saying Flat Zone X needs air conditioning?
Oh yeah, and Florida is also surrounded by ocean on 3 sides.
I'm still gonna have to go outside sometimes, plus it's not like an ocean is always gonna be readily available to me. You know what, this isn't important.
Or is it?
No, it's not important. What do you expect me to do? Meditate under a waterfall as I gorge on my grilled cheese? Don't tell me. The next entry is Rumble Falls, isn't it?
Yep.
Sharp Spikes present.
Unfortunately.
Bring it on. say what you will about Rumble Falls, but if you held a gun to my head and forced me to bring back one more stage from Brawl, it'd definitely be this one.
It's the only one you'd be able to realistically bring back.
And now you understand why. Yeah, it's no wonder the franchise left this one behind. I'll give it credit for a pretty background and absolutely nothing else, as it's basically just a frustrating and inconsistent obstacle course.
Now, you're probably aware that this stage has a lot in common with Icicle Mountain from Melee. It's a stage that's constantly scrolling vertically. But the reason why that stage isn't on here is because, while it's clearly not the best stage ever, it's not exactly riddled with hazards, platforms, and whatnot that are all randomly thrown together. Also, Icicle Mountain sometimes scrolls downward, which adds a little variety to the stage to make it at least interesting. Rumble Falls only scrolls upward, and while it does warn players of a speed up, that speed up itself is very inconsistent, speeding for just a little bit and then just stops.
And that's before you get into how excessively random the whole thing feels. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't need an explanation for every stage element. The plane, for example, I'm fine with that. The intersecting stone platforms, confusing, but why not, I guess. The lone spike that immediately kills you.
Okay, does it actually kill you?
I mean...
Son of a monkey! This stage what even is?
Like I said, we don't need an explanation for everything, but I really do have to wonder what the pretense for something like this is, especially considering it's at the beginning and can kill you before it even comes on screen. This genuinely seems like a design choice born from sheer misanthropy, as if Rumble Falls itself is proclaiming its own hatred for the player base, which I respect in a morbid way, but feelings mutual, I suppose.
It's no wonder that this didn't return in future installments. It's a huge mess of a stage with so much random going on, be it from the vertical scrolling speed, or its randomly assorted platforms and hazards. I'm sure it would have looked pretty in HD, but is that worth bringing back a stage that players will be fighting more than who they're actually supposed to fight? I didn't think so.
And the worst part? My grilled cheese is all soggy now.
No, that part is on you.
I told you Florida was uninhabitable.
I told you it's surrounded by ocean on 3
It's Hannonbow.
Now, I'm sure some of you are surprised to see that this stage isn't number 1 on the list. Since its debut in Brawl, Hannonbow has been one of the most notoriously hated stages in the franchise.
And even the two of us kinda fell back on that bandwagon. We planned for this list as far back as 2015, and on that original list, we had Hannonbow listed as the absolute worst stage. And to be fair, it's kinda earned that reputation, as it really is one of the most boring and awkward stages to fight on. The reference is obscure enough to be kinda cool, but that's about it.
This stage comprises 11 small, thin, disconnected leaf-shaped platforms, with all but the bottom 3 being fall-through platforms. Yeah, this stage is a bit of a chore to navigate without falling to your death. The main gimmick of the stage sees the platforms angling up and down when they get hit by an attack. And trust me, they will get hit. This is done so that the fish that get launched will hit the leaves in a certain order, creating musical sounds. It's a nice way of incorporating how Hannonbow from Electroplankton functions, but it makes for a weird gimmick that makes the already difficult traversing of the stage even more difficult.
Well, if the leaves are giving you trouble, you could always go for a It's ornamental key. The stage has decorative water!
It's from the game that introduced swimming. Why can't you swim here? And this wasn't fixed in Ultimate!
You know, I really did try to intellectualize the appeal of this stage for many years. I really did consider it the worst stage for a while, because truly, I did not understand what it added. But you know what? I get it now. I finally understand the special qualities that Hannonbow, and only Hannonbow, brings to the table.
Is that it can be used as a green screen?
I mean, way to steal my thunder, but yes, it's a green screen. Thank God, truly, that we have a stage like this to fulfill this unbelievably special and frankly vital niche.
Yeah, but other than that, Hannonbow really isn't a good stage. Maneuverability is a huge task when playing here, because if you aren't careful, you're done, son.
Yeah, but none of that is really important. All that matters is that we can edit SpongeBob into the background of our footage. Thank you, forever and always, to my dearest love, Hannonbow.
Son of a monkey. Whose idea was it that it was okay to bring this series stage back and not the clearly superior one?
Gee, if only there was a more iconic setting for Pac-Man. I'll give Pac-Land a bit of credit here. It is hideous. Oh, wait.
Fun fact, would you believe me if I told you that I never unlocked this stage in Smash 4? That might be due to the fact that you have to play some amount of Smash Tour to unlock it. How fitting. A terrible stage is unlocked via a terrible mode. Let that set the tone.
This stage really is where the design philosophy of adapting old retro classic stages perfectly really starts to test my patience. Like, I'm sorry, but sometimes you just have to look at the visual style given to you and go, nah, this is horrendous and ugly, let's not do this. Cause sometimes you just get a horrible clash of visual styles like this.
In fact, that's one of the bad things about it. It's so visually unappealing that playing on this with the game's very detailed characters feels awkward. Like, there are times where I don't even know where I'm supposed to stand due to the clashing art styles. Oh, did we forget to mention this is an auto-scrolling stage? And it's the only horizontal one that made the list. And because of the clashing art styles with the fighters and the many set pieces and hazards thrown about, it's actually very frustrating to actually fight on here, actually. That's a lot of actuallys. That's how actually frustrated I am with the stage.
And you know Key is pissed when he says the word actually a lot. But for real, the problems with Pac-Land are honestly so blatant and overly talked about that there really isn't so much that either of the two of us could add to the conversation. If you don't hate it for snubbing Pac-Maze, then maybe you hate it for the, again, terrible visuals. And if not that, then maybe for being one of the most obnoxious auto-scrollers. And when you're somehow sinking lower than the instant kill you spike from Rumble Falls, that's an issue. I know this is an uber generic line in the countdown scene, but what else is there to even say about this?
Son of a monkey!
What?
You actually can't swim in the water here just like Cannonbow. How does that make any sense?
You know what? I'll count that as a new criticism of Pac-Land. Now let's wrap this up.
Like, really, just look at the footage we've been playing. It says everything. It's not a fun stage, and it's a shame that this is Pac-Man's only home turf in Ultimate. Like, what was the reasoning and logic for not bringing back Pac-Maze? Is it because they couldn't implement its gimmick? Well, that can't be right because Golden Plains has a similar gimmick and it was brought back in Ultimate.
And you know what the worst part of all this is? It's not even the worst stage. But before we get into what is, here's some dishonorable mentions. If this were a better stage, it would be called Magic Can.
In all seriousness, it's only bad when hazards are on.
This is kinda what it's like to play around in a real demolition site. Too dangerous, too stupid, endlessly chaotic, but kind of fun.
Its problem in the original was that it had no grabbable ledges, but later versions fixed that, so it's just okay.
The word living is false advertising, but seriously, this is more so just really generic layout-wise and mildly irritating hazard-wise. I admittedly have quite a bit of affection for this stage. Crane at least is really cool, but I can't deny it's incredibly janky, and sometimes losing lives on this feels like a robbery.
This was originally going to be on the list until I decided to play it again and realized that the bottom platforms were solid because I thought they weren't. Say what you will about the console version of the stage, it's at least interesting, but this one's just boring with not a lot of room to fight on. Consider it the unofficial number 11.
Piss World.
So many cool Kirby set pieces to choose from, and we're doing this tacky lemon lime colored nonsense? If you say so.
We're never going to get a stage based on a modern Kirby game, are we? Visually, it's stunning, but otherwise, it's walk-offs the stage. At least the music's good.
I like it.
Well, I don't care for your face.
No one ever does.
I don't care for your face.
Minecraft World.
But this stage isn't bad at all.
Minecraft World.
Number 1.
So throwing aside the performative anger for just a second, it's worth mentioning that at the end of the day, Key and I are both big fans of the series, and these stages here, while they're certainly bad, they don't necessarily make the series as a whole any worse. Sometimes it's just fun to roast the things you love.
And as we alluded to earlier, some bad stages are just inevitable. You can't always avoid disaster, which is certainly the case with this stage.
75 meters?
75 entire frickin' meters. Pac-Land may be terrible, but at least they try to do something that's a scrap interesting. Here, It's terrible, and that's it. Everything about it will work against you. Trying to traverse this stage is a nightmare because there's hardly any space to traverse to, and if you somehow do make it to a platform, there's probably a hazard waiting in the wings to screw your day over.
Like I said, we're still Smash fans, so I have no shame in calling 75 meters an absolutely unhinged comedy of errors. Seriously, say what you will about all the other stages on this list, they're still marginally playable. 75 meters doesn't give the player even an iota of comfortable space. The platforms are unbearably tiny. There's ladders strewn about the whole thing, and the one area where 2 or more people could reasonably fight is squished into the upper part of the screen with a giant monkey hurling springs at you. Every meter is a grievous car crash of stage design, and presumably there's 75 of them.
A weird design change that I'm baffled was even removed was, in Brawl, there were these long walk-off platforms to the right of the stage that provided at least some semblance of fighting space. It's still a terrible stage, but it at least gave a shred of something to work with. Well, guess what? They removed those long platforms in later versions of the stage, making an already terrible stage even worse.
And speaking of Brawl, it's wild to me that Nintendo had the temerity, the gall, to keep bringing this stage back after its debut. Like, talk about having absolutely no shame whatsoever. They jumped headfirst into making the most dysfunctional cesspit of a stage, and then said, nah, we'll own it. In a way, I can't help but respect it. I've rarely, if ever, met a person that liked this stage, ironically or otherwise. But it's still here, 15 years, and what do you know? It's still here.
I mean, I understand why they wanted to bring it back in Smash for Wii U. That game introduced 8-player Smash, so maybe since this is a big stage, it would at least work with that mode. It doesn't, by the way, but then why bring it back in Ultimate if it's so terrible and no one wants to play on it? Just scrap jungle hijinks, but not this? I thought we were supposed to have fun in this game, but no. You give us Pauline.
So ultimately, what's the takeaway here? 75M is without question our worst stage, but what did we learn from all this?
It's that metric stanks.
Sure, let's go with that. And that about wraps things up. Thanks for having me on your channel, Key.
It was a pleasure working with you ripping these stages a new one. So what do we do now?
How about pool trip?
With water we can swim in?
Yeah!
Yeah! Oh wait, you're made of fire.
Oh yeah, I'd probably die, wouldn't I?